3/6 dividing by decimals. There's a little concept that I want to present to you before we talk about an actual dividing by decimals question. You won't see any decimals in this first question, I do, but just watch something, okay? So if I take 500 and I divide it by 100, the answer is 5. If I take 50 and I divide it by 10, the answer is 5. If I take 5 and I divide it by 1, the answer is 5. And if I take 5/10 and divide it by 1/10, even if you wouldn't have known this one mentally before, the answer is 5. And the same little pattern you see that I did would go the other way. So here what I did is each time I divided by 10, both numbers. So I started out, I got 100, 500 and 100 divided, 500 divided by 100 is 5. I divided both numbers by 10 and got the same answer. I divided, if you go from the original, I divided both numbers by 100 and got the same answer. Okay? And the same would be true in reverse. 5 divided by 1 is 5. I multiply both numbers by 10 and I get the same answer I would from the original. Now why would I bother to bring this up? Well, it has to do with the reason we divide the way we divide. So if I take 7.2 and I'm supposed to divide it by 0.2, 2/10, 7 and 2/10, I'm supposed to divide it by 2/10, we don't know how to do that mentally. The division algorithm that you use, you don't really know how many times 2/10 goes into 7. So the whole fact that we move this decimal point relates back to this. I'm really just multiplying both numbers by 10. So the reason I make this 2 and this 72 is not some magic, it's just so I can estimate better. And when you go back to this, maybe you didn't know one of these problems, but by changing both things by the same power of 10, you can do a problem that you can work better. 5 divided by 1 is easier than 0.5 divided by 0.1. But because I've changed both numbers times 10, it's legal. It's something that'll work. So when I go to divide 7.2 by 0.2, the reason I move each one over is because I've multiplied them both by 10. All right, so now 2 goes into 72 3 times, 6, subtract, bring down the 2. My answer is 36. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say I have 29.6 and I'm going to divide it by 3.7. Okay, so step 1, make it something I can do better mentally. I don't really know how many times 3.7 goes into anything, so I'm going to multiply this by 10 and I have to change my other number by a power of 10 as well. I'll move up the decimal point just so things are a little bit easier to work with. And now I have to figure out how many times does 37 go into 296. Well, I can use some different estimation skills. I could call this 40. And what are some of my 40s I know? I know 40 times 7 would be 280. That's a little small, maybe. This 30 times 8 would be 240. And I'm thinking this is probably 8. I did a little trick I do. I know that 8 times 7 is 56. So I'm thinking there's a pretty good chance that since this number ends in 6, that that's exactly what I need to do. 56, carry the 5, 296. Okay? Let me repeat again that the only reason we move them both over is because it's an easier problem for us to then work through. Okay? Let's try 32.5 divided by 2.6. Okay? Times 10, times 10. 26 into 32 one time. Subtract 65. That's about 30 into 60, so let's go with twice. 12. Subtract. How about 5 times? I did my trick again. I want it to end in 0, and 6 times 5 is 30. It ends in 0. So my answer is 12.5. Okay? Want to show you another one because sometimes this gets a little confusing. I'm going to do 92.37 divided by 0.5, okay, or 0.5. Okay, should I move this over once and this over once? Or should I move this over twice and this over twice? That's the trouble sometimes. Well, remember, all I care about is whether this is a whole number. So I'm going to move this over one time and this over one time. So instead of putting 0.5 into 92.37, now I'm putting 5 into 923. So 5 goes into 5 once. Subtract, bring down the next one. 8, subtract, bring down the next one. 4 is 20, subtract. Bring down the next one, 7, subtract 4. Whew, that was a pretty tough example. Alrighty, that is really all there is to dividing a decimal by a decimal. I think you're ready to go.